from the Washington, D.C. area. It's the Inside Scoop, all the news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's the host.
Good evening. Welcome to the show. I'm Jeff Barnett. Welcome to the Inside Scoop. Tonight we're talking with two candidates for the U.S. Congress. We're talking with Marc Savitt, a Republican from the Winchester area. And then in the second part of the show, we'll be talking with Richard Bolger, a Democrat from the Oak Hill area or Fairfax County. He's an attorney. The basic question is, why does anybody want to run for Congress these days? According to public policy polling, voters have a higher opinion of root canals, colonoscopies, traffic jams, cockroaches, and used car salesmen than they do of the U.S. Congress. On the plus side, Congress has a higher rating than the Kardashians, North Korea, the Ebola virus, meth labs, communism, and gonorrhea. And so, Mr. Marc Savitt, please tell us, why do you want to run for the U.S. Congress?
Well, because I want to be more important than the Kardashians, actually. I want to run for Congress because as a small business owner, as somebody who works up on Capitol Hill not as a lobbyist, but as a volunteer, president of a trade association, who deals with Congress every week, advocating for small business and consumers. I want to make a difference, and I know that sounds like a standard line, but there needs to be a difference made because the folks that are up on Capitol Hill, for the most part, are career politicians, and this is the problem. And I blame all of us as voters for the problem on Capitol Hill because every 2 years we keep returning the same type of individual back up to Capitol Hill. What we need are small business owners. We need the average voter, the Main Street person, to go up there because they know from the unintended consequences of all the laws and the agencies' rules and regulations that are passed. They know how it's affecting Main Street, so it's going to take Main Street to fix the problem.
And when you say small business owners, that's part of the reason that you're in favor of term limits.
Correct.
And what kind of a term limit regime would you like to have?
8 to 10 years tops. Any more than that, you become a career politician. And the reason I say 8 to 10 years is because it normally takes anywhere from maybe 3 to 5, maybe even 6 years to get a bill passed. So you want to be there. If you have bills, you want to see that these bills are passed. Now, there are some individuals that have been in Congress for over 20 years and have never had a bill passed, not one of their own. They've signed on as a co-sponsor. So what I want to do, I want to go in, I want to start to make changes in there with other colleagues of like mind, and then pass the baton under other individuals that are of like mind and let them continue with the work that we've started, not to be a career politician. That's why we have gridlock.
Yeah. And you can actually, in this day and age, especially congressmen in our area, can have an effect early. Chris Van Hollen from Montgomery County, Eric Cantor, from actually the neighboring district, the 5th. Both of them had a role in Congress at a high level after just a couple of terms.
Correct.
And in addition, kind of the advantage that you have by having term limits is that in this rapidly changing time, you get people on the Hill who are sophisticated in kind of what is actually happening on Main Street today.
Correct. It has to remain fresh. If you're there too long, you lose touch with your constituents, and that's the biggest problem that I see.
But then it kind of begs the question is, okay, so what is it that you want to do? When you go up to the Hill, what's going to be that first bill that you put into the hopper?
The very first bill that I would drop would be a bill that we call America Works. It's about jobs. The biggest problem that we have in this country right now is unemployment. And individuals that collect unemployment, you start off for 26 weeks. You're sitting home. You go out. You look for jobs. You can't find a job. You feel rejected, which you are. You're sitting at home. You're depressed. You don't want to go out and look for another job. And of course, that leads to other things, possibly medically. Stress causes a lot of medical problems. So what we suggest is after 2 months of the 6 months that you can collect, The individual would then be placed in some type of a business that would be involved in this program. They would work there, still getting paid the unemployment, which they're not allowed to do normally, so they're working for this employer. The employer, it helps them because they have another set of hands in this business that they might not otherwise be able to afford. You can help with their productivity, and you're teaching this individual a new trade. You're retraining them, all the while they're getting paid for it.
What would be the incentive to businesses to take people in?
Well, because they may need somebody, maybe if they hire or if they bring somebody on under this program and their productivity picks up, maybe they'll be able to hire this person, or maybe more than one person. And as you know, employers pay the unemployment insurance. The employees do not pay that. So in a way, maybe they're recouping some of that, those funds that they're putting out for unemployment, which will give them more money to spend elsewhere.
Well, people can do that today, though, right? I mean, I could, if I'm out of work, I could go to my local gas station, or I could go to my whatever, and say, hey, I'll work for nothing, just kind of so I can learn the ropes. So I could do that today. What's different?
I don't
here?
know if they'd let them do that for liability reasons. And again, you know, you're collecting unemployment, so you've got that fallback. You have money to be able to pay some of your bills. Obviously not as much as you'd like to have, but it's something. So you're out being retrained. You have that security, that peace of mind. You're not working for nothing. Because if somebody's going to work for nothing, how long are they really going to work there?
And you think that this program should be kick-started at the federal level?
Absolutely. Although unemployment is usually is handled in the states, the federal government does have a lot of oversight over that. For example, they were going to increase, actually did increase, the unemployment to 99 weeks. So the federal government does have some authority over the states when it comes to this.
Yeah. You mentioned how unemployment has all kinds of consequences, to include stress.
Yes.
So now we're getting into healthcare, and of course one of the real schisms between the two parties is Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act.
Right.
So what's your take on that? Would you vote for it? Would you vote to get rid of it? Would you replace it with something? Just kind of talk about that.
Well, everybody talks about repealing it, which I think it should be repealed. But before you can actually talk about repealing it, you have to have something to replace it with. Right. And I think the easiest way to do that is to go back to not what we had, but maybe enhance what we had. Health insurance is handled in the individual state. So you're stuck at the borders of that state. You can't go beyond that. What we need to do is open it up nationwide. Competition breeds lower prices. Competition breeds better programs. And you know, with the Affordable Care Act, or what we like to call the Unaffordable Care Act, but the Affordable Care Act tells you what you have to have. There is a set minimum of what you have to have as far as coverage. For example, there's been individuals that have had, women that have had hysterectomies or well beyond their childbearing years, and they have to have maternity coverage. So of course that's all built in, that's part of the premium. The problem we have with the premiums are skyrocketing, people can't afford them. We have deductibles that are outrageous. So if you have somebody who's in reasonably good health, or especially a younger individual, they're going to be paying a lot of money for that health care insurance where they're really not going to get to use it until way down the line.
And do you think that skyrocketing premiums are primarily because of Obamacare?
I do, because if you look at what we had before, there's been how many millions of policies canceled around the country. The individuals that were paying those previous premiums were paying something, I don't want to use the word reasonable because they were too high to begin with, but now they're exorbitant, they're substantially higher. I know an individual, a friend in Texas, for example, that was paying something like $800 a month, and he went to $1,500 a month. His deductible went from $5,000 to $8,000. He can't afford it.
You know, healthcare in our country right now, it's a sixth of the economy, 16%. And I saw something the other day, primarily because of the aging population, the boomers, that it's going up to 20%. That's a big bite out of our economy. Our developed competitors in this world, you know, the Japanese, the Germans, the English, the French, they're paying around 10%, 11% of their GDP for it. So how do we get healthcare costs down? Not just to stop going up, but how do we get them to go down?
Well, that's the age-old question, and I agree with you on that. I had a situation myself last March, a year ago, with a kidney stone, and I happened to be out of state at the time, and I ended up in a hospital in Chicago, and I was there for a little less than 24 hours, and including the ride from the airport to the hospital and the stay, it was over $11,000. And all I did was get a couple of shots of painkiller and something they called breakfast. But it's part of the problem is it derives from the insurance again, because the insurance companies don't pay out what they really should pay. So what happens is you have to increase the costs of what things actually cost. So you end up getting, because they don't pay you the full amount, so this way you end up getting what your costs are plus your profit. So that's why they have to increase all of the, everyone's heard of the $100 Tylenol.
Right, because I mean, the attorneys, the healthcare hospital companies, the insurers.
Right.
There's a lot of the big pharma. There's a lot of people that are taking money off of the top.
That's right.
One of your passions is small business, being a small business person. So we have a couple of minutes before the first break, but why don't you just talk a little bit about what you think Congress should do in the near term to help small business people?
Well, what Congress needs to do is help stop all of the excess regulation we have. We have a tremendous amount of overregulation. Oftentimes when they come up with bills, or if agencies come up with regulations or rules, it's like they have a solution in search of a problem. Mm-hmm. They're usually very late to the party. If you look at the financial crisis started back in 07 and 08. And the market actually, the industry actually, because of the billions and billions of dollars that they lost, they actually self-corrected. Dodd-Frank kicked in. It gave us the CFPB, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And what they did was they came out with all of these rules and regulations for issues or for problems that had already been solved. So we need to get the government off of the back of small business. With overregulation. We need them to reduce corporate taxes, because that is a big chunk. And we also need to get the government from competing with small business. They do that. There's student loans, for example. The banks were handling student loans. The government said that it was too expensive. They were charging or overcharging all of these students. So the government took it over. A lot of jobs were lost in the private sector as a result of that. The government actually made almost $200 billion in the past 2 years, and the servicing of those loans, where the individual borrower would pay for those loans, was in many cases, many of the servicers shipped that job overseas.
Okay.
So we lost a lot of workers that way.
Yeah, we're talking with Marc Savitt, a small business person from the Winchester area, who's running for Congress, running for the 10th District, a congressional district that is presently held by Frank Wolf and has been for the last 32 years.
Right.
So, back in just a few seconds with Marc Savitt. Thank you, Marc.
Thank you. We're off?
Yeah.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Around the world, 1 out of every 3 women will be beaten or otherwise abused in their lifetime, often by a family member or loved one. A future free from violence. It's all she's ever wished for.
Did you know you have the power to stop children from joining gangs? You can help a father find a job and home for his family. You can assist a woman who can't afford the medicine she needs to live and the home she can't live without. You can choose to make a difference in our community. Support Volunteers of America, and you can help improve the lives of nearly 2 million Americans each year with programs and services that help individuals and families overcome their challenges to become as independent as possible. Support the programs that are working in our community. Contact Volunteers of America today. Call call 1-800-899-0089.
For some folks, saving for the future is easy, but for you, it might take a little more effort. Saving for your future is your responsibility, and there's a lot to save for.
I never thought of that.
Like your child's education, perhaps uncovered medical expenses, or just to be sure you can live the way you want when you retire. The time is now to save for tomorrow. Save now or work forever. The choice is yours. Choose to save.
We're getting the inside scoop from Marc Savitt, a successful small businessman from the Winchester area who's running for Congress, the 10th Congressional District. The 10th District stretches across the top of Virginia, about 14% of it. The vote is in the Valley area, Clark, Winchester, Frederick. 41% is Loudoun County. Can we show the map, please? About 30% is Fairfax County, and then 13% down Manassas, Prince William County. So that's pretty much how the vote goes. Marc, we talked a lot in the last thing, talked term limits, small business, healthcare. Housing is a huge issue for people, and you have testified to Congress on this. So
I have.
What's your idea about where should we be going forward on housing?
Well, housing represents about a little over 18% of the overall of the GDP. And a lot of folks don't think it's important. Well, if they don't think it's important, they just have to look back a few years to 07 and 08 when we had the crash in this country. Most people understand the issue because they either tried to purchase a house or refinance their house, right. I should say. Their appraised values came in very low. So. Excuse me, their values came in very low, and then that's what made them understand how serious this problem was. We had a tremendous, millions of people lost their homes. We actually had a solution to this. I went to the Obama administration, the transition team, and had a solution how to work this thing out where we could have saved a lot of the folks that had foreclosures. And I'll tell you this very briefly. You had two types of individuals. You have those that, if you reduce their interest rates, could actually afford to stay in their house. Others that you could reduce the interest rate to zero. There was no way they were going to stay in the house. So one of the suggestions was to go back to the RTC, the Resolution Trust Corp, like we had during the S&L crisis. Mm-hmm. You're creating a bad bank, so to speak. The RTC would have, or whatever they called it this time, would have purchased the bad loans or the non-performing loans from the lenders at a reduced price, at a discount. They would then, as the government, take it over. If the individual could actually afford to stay in their house, if you reduce their interest rate down substantially, after a 5-year period, they couldn't sell the house for the first 5 years, and when they did sell the house, if they realized a profit, they would pay a recapture tax or a small portion of that back to the government because the government helped them stay in the house and reduce their interest rate. Then you have those individuals that no matter what you reduce the rate to, would not be able to stay in the house. So you give them the option of staying at the house as a renter. They would turn the house over, stay as a renter. They're paying a substantially lower price. The benefit for the government at that point would have been that the house was being maintained, so you don't have a blight on the neighborhood. It's not an embarrassment for the family. If a family is displaced as a result of a foreclosure, especially if there's children, it's very hard in a family. So this way, they would be able to stay there, and at the end of a 5-year period, right. When the values came back up, give them an opportunity to repurchase the house. And if they could not repurchase the house and they moved out, the government could then sell the house. It's 5 years down the line, sell the house and make back at least what they put into it, if not more. So in the end, the government could have actually made a profit on this, but they turned us down.
Well, actually, Richard Bolger, who's in the second part of our show, that he has a similar program, I believe, and we'll talk about that. But one of the questions I'm going to have for him, and I can raise it now with you, the banks don't hold that paper anymore. It's been securitized.
Correct.
So
it's sold.
It's held by people.
Right.
So pension funds, whatever. What's the incentive for those people to walk away to sell that loan to the government, to do whatever with that loan to the government? Why should they do so?
Because most of them actually lost everything, their investments on that. You had pension funds, others that were invested in those mortgage-backed securities, and a lot of them lost just about everything in that.
But are you talking about 2008 and 2009?
2008, yes,
okay,
back then.
But what about today? What should we be doing today?
Today, as far as trying to keep people in the house?
Well, sure.
Well, we need to work with them, counseling, if perhaps modifications are a good thing to have. There's a whole host of things they can do before somebody's foreclosed. You see, when somebody falls behind on their mortgage payment, legally, after 30 days, their loan can be accelerated where everything is due and payable. We want to avoid that. Nobody wins with foreclosure. So we want to try and help these folks, and if for some reason they just can't pay it, then they have to transition out of the house.
Okay. Three other areas that you wanted to talk about were government spending, education, and national security.
Right.
Which one of those do you want to?
Let's take education.
Okay.
Education is something that's very near and dear to me. I have a 26-year-old daughter who is a kindergarten teacher, and she was teaching third grade, and she moved to kindergarten. One of the biggest problems that, from listening to her and talking with other teachers, we have this program that was put in place during the Bush administration called No Child Left Behind, and they have the standards of learning.
Right. No child left untested is another word for it.
Yes, that's exactly right. But what you're seeing today is, what we found is that the teachers are not teaching the subjects, they're teaching how to pass the test, because although the students have to pass the test to move on, it's also a report card for the teachers as well. The children aren't learning the way they should be learning, so that's a big part of it. The other thing is, our teachers today are not valued the way they should be valued. You know, the teachers are training the next generation. So it's important that we make sure that they are properly compensated. And I'm not saying exorbitant, but I'm saying properly compensated. Sometimes they go for 2, 3, 4 years without any type of an increase. And we also want to make sure that there's respect restored to the teachers. Now, I remember when I was growing up, if I had a problem with the teacher, not saying that I did, but if I had a problem with the teacher, my mother and father automatically took the side of the teacher. And that's the way it should be, because there has to be a level of respect. Today, it's completely different. My daughter tells me, and other teachers have told me, that people walk in, they're disrespectful to the teachers in front of the students, which is, in my opinion, improper, because how does that teacher then be able to control that student in a classroom environment? So there's a lot that needs to be done with that. But most importantly is, no child left behind. That needs to go away. That's a big problem today.
You know, I had the Catholic nuns when I was growing up.
How's your knuckles?
Yeah, and nobody argued with them, not even God. But let me kind of develop that a little bit. For the most part, we do education at the local level.
Right.
So when you talk about paying them more, and having greater respect, what's the federal role there? Well,
I think there should be the federal government, and since we're in Virginia, Richmond should stay out of the local decision making for schools. Nobody knows best how to educate their local children than the local authorities. So I think it's important that Richmond and Washington just leave.
And less is more.
That's right.
Yeah. Government spending, national security. Your son was in the Air Force and now works for the Department of the Air Force.
Right.
So in national security, a lot of criticisms from your party against the president and the current plan for the 2015 budget and onward. What's your take on that?
Well, I think the first thing we have to do, the first thing that the President of the United States, who's the Commander-in-Chief, and the federal government have to do are protect the citizens of this country. You can't do that if you're going to reduce the size of our military to what it was 75 years ago. We have to stay strong. It's a deterrent. I know some people don't like when you say that, but it is a deterrent. I mean, if you have a very big kid in the schoolyard, who's going to go pick on that kid? Most people wouldn't pick on that kid. So that's what we have to do. We also have to make sure that we take care of our veterans. That's something we're not doing. Look at the VA hospitals, what's taking place there. They wait in some cases, for years to get a decision on whether or not they're going to be compensated for a disability that they sustained in some cases in a war zone. So our military is also treated without respect in many cases. And we need to make sure that the military is taking care of those that fought, wounded warriors and so forth. And we also have to make sure that we remain strong so that if there is a need for us to protect ourselves, then we're capable of doing it. Otherwise, we're going to have problems. You look at problems with what's going on in Kosovo today. Even if we were to go over there, we're in Afghanistan too. We're splitting ourselves too thin. If we ever had to go into different parts of the country, we wouldn't be able to do it and adequately protect our troops.
You were talking about Crimea.
Crimea.
And do you think that the United States military today, you talked about a lack of respect for service members, a lack of respect from whom?
From the government. I think it's important because if there was respect, they would treat our veterans a lot better than they do. My dad is 89 years old. He's a World War II veteran, and he has had a problem with disabilities all his life since he got out of the service, and he has seen his disabilities cut, and he's gone back trying to restore some of them, and it's taking years, and in my opinion, they're trying to wait him out. He's 89 years old.
So our budget today is about $496 billion, about $500 billion a year. What level of funding are you looking towards?
Well, I don't really have an answer for that, to be honest with you, because as far as dollars go, we just want to make sure that the government is that the military is adequately funded. And I'm not saying we've all heard about the $2,000 hammers and so forth. We have to make sure that any waste, fraud, or abuse is taken care of, and that we make it as lean as possible financially and getting rid of those issues. But we also want to make sure that our troops, if they are in a war zone, they have enough equipment to protect themselves, and also that they're paid adequately too. Because look at what's happened. A lot of the individuals that are in the military are on food stamps. So, we need to make sure that we take care of our troops. That's job number one. Now,
Mark, last point, we have just over a minute left. Government spending in general. Defense is half of all discretionary spending, but of course, discretionary spending is less than half of the total budget. So, what kind of a message do you want to leave our viewers with in terms of what Marc Savitt will do about overall government spending? Well, government spending it's a runaway right now. We have a lot of programs out there that, again, with the waste, fraud, and abuse, if you take the USDA program, what most people don't know is USDA, 80% of their budget goes to food stamps. Now, we want to make sure people are going to eat. We want to make sure that those that really need that program are adequately taken care of. But when we have individuals standing outside supermarkets and 7-Elevens and other stores and going up to individuals coming out and asking them if they want food stamps when they didn't even think they needed it, and signing them up and so forth, I think things like that need to stop. We need to stop spending on projects. A big problem is when you have a bill, how many clean bills do we actually see in Congress? We see a lot of pork in those bills, and that needs to stop. We need to pass more clean bills. Okay. Mark, I really appreciate you being with us tonight. My pleasure. Marc Savitt is running for the United States Congress in the 10th Congressional District. He's a successful small business person from the Winchester area, and he's running for the 10th Congressional District seat, a seat that has been held by Congressman Frank Wolf for the past 32 years. So the primary is in about a month and a half? It's on April the 26th. Thanks very much. Thank you.
Too many women get hit by their boyfriends and husbands. Too many women are pressured into having unprotected sex. Half of the people in the world living with AIDS are women. It doesn't have to be this way. Together, we can change this reality. Let's strive for a world free of violence.
At Volunteers of America, we don't just give kids a way to stay off the streets. We give them the tools they need to reach their full potential. We don't just help the elderly receive needed care. We help them live life to the fullest. We don't just provide food for homeless individuals and families. We provide job training and placement so they can buy groceries. Volunteers of America is a national organization that for over 100 years has provided programs and services that allow people to overcome their challenges to become vital members of their community. At Volunteers of America, we don't just help people, we help people help themselves. Find out how you can support the programs that are working in your community. Contact Volunteers of America today. Call 1-800-899-0089.
Drivers face all kinds of distractions.
Guys, stop playing now.
127 consecutive.
Before your wireless phone becomes one of them, stop. Drive safely. Keep your phone in easy reach and dial sensibly. In bad weather or traffic, call later and use a hands-free device. Remember, with wireless, safety is your call.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Welcome back. I'm Jeff Barnett. This is the Inside Scoop, and we're getting the Inside Scoop from Richard Bolger, an attorney from the Fairfax area, from Oak Hill, right?
That's correct.
Richard is running for the 10th Congressional District, and he is a Democratic candidate. The primary is, the convention is when?
Well, it's April 26th.
Okay, so we have about a month and a half.
Right, preceded by a dozen or so caucuses.
Yeah. And again, the 10th Congressional District goes right across the top of the state of Virginia, and 41% of the votes are in the Loudoun County area, 14% out in the Valley, and the rest in Fairfax and down in the Manassas area. Before, on the first part of the show, we talked about the low esteem that people hold Congress, and how, in terms of popularity ratings, Congress is lower than used car salesmen, but higher than gonorrhea.
Oh,
so,
lovely.
So Richard, just tell us, why do you want to be a member of the United States Congress?
Before I do, I actually heard that members of Congress are actually less popular than zombies. So why? Because it's an incredibly important job.
Yeah.
Because the American people are tired of the gridlock in Washington. They're tired of the same old politicians arguing extremely partisan positions and accomplishing nothing that needs to be done to get the country moving forward. Moreover, Jeff, these are the people that essentially send our children to war. I mean, you can't have a more important job in the country, to me, than being a member of Congress. So.
Well said. Once you get to Congress, there are certain things that I'm sure you want to do starting on day one. So, one of the classic questions is, what's the first bill that you want to throw in the hopper on that first day?
Well, I think student loan debt reform is incredibly important. I do a lot of representing average, everyday Americans who are dealing with their financial situation. And I find some things are very common among most of the people I talk to. Medical debt was a huge one, and student loan debt is a very big problem. There's more student loan debt in the economy than all credit cards and car loans combined.
That's incredible.
Which is a phenomenal statistic. And moreover, there's no way to really repay a lot of this debt in a person's lifetime, oftentimes, depending upon the job or if they have a job, if they make enough money. The student loans, private student loans, are no longer dischargeable in bankruptcy, so they are, once you get them, you're stuck with them. And as I said, it's just a ticking time bomb in the American economy, and I think we have to means test the repayment of these student loans to the debtor's income.
So give me an example.
Give you an example. For example, say you go to college and you get a degree and you've spent $100,000, and you get out and you're
a teacher.
You're earning $40,000. The amount of debt you may have to repay it may be unrealistic relative to your income, and so we have to graduate the payments to the income so that, and if that means that the government has to be involved in modifying the repayment of the term to the income of the person repaying the debt. I'm getting a little convoluted here, but the bottom line is graduate the repayment to the income being earned so that it's a realistic payment.
Okay. And are there other major initiatives along that line that deserve at least some discussion?
In student loan debt
Correct.
reform? Well, I'm focusing on the repayment of it. My common sense tells me that the skyrocketing tuition is probably fueled to a great extent by the ease with which one can acquire student loan debt, not unlike the real estate market when people were buying bigger and bigger houses because the money was so readily available.
Right.
I think one fuels the other, and so I think we have to look at the skyrocketing cost as well. But I think you can get at it maybe from the money side, the loan side.
Okay. Let's switch a little bit. Another hot issue in our district, of course, is immigration. This is something that we are in many ways not only a nation of immigrants, but this is a congressional district that has a heavy immigrant population. Mm-hmm. So what should Congress, what are some of the first steps Congress should take about immigration?
Well, this is a uniquely federal problem, okay? Right. So this is where we have to have leadership at the federal level, because you leave it to the localities, the states, et cetera, to start to enforce immigration laws. You have the situation
or create immigration laws, which
you have the situation we have today,
right?
Where maybe someone down in a county decides that we're going to start checking everybody's immigration papers at every traffic stop, or Arizona, the situation there, and these mm-hmm. pockets, if you will, of discontent perhaps are conducive to bigotry and hatred, and I believe that federal government has to show leadership. You have to immediately start talking about embracing law-abiding people who are here working, paying taxes, raising their families. And so first you have to have a positive dialogue, mm-hmm. and then you have to hopefully work together to create an immigration law which has a path to citizenship. It could be long, it could be expensive, but a path nonetheless where people can live without being in fear of being deported, and they're given an opportunity to contribute to society, which many of them already are, and they just need to be kind of incorporated into the system. And then, of course, once we have a good law, then we can focus on the enforcement side.
Yeah, because we have kind of two problems. There's one, dealing with the problem that we have today. And then the other challenge is, okay, well, how are we going to avoid creating the same problem, in the future?
True.
And we first started talking about student loan debt, and of course, students are the DREAM Act are part of this immigration conundrum.
Right.
So, do you have any specific ideas about dealing with the children of immigrants, of undocumented aliens who apply to college and try to get their life going here in America?
Well, I think it has to be a part of the solution, but people have to see that the benefits are not just being handed out to people with no, shall we say, commitment on the part of the recipient to contribute
cost.
Back. Yes. So certainly when our state schools are so packed, our universities, it's very, very difficult to get a student into University of Virginia. To think that somebody who is here illegally is going to take a seat from an American citizen, is not, it hits at your fundamental sense of fairness. But by the same token, again, these are good people. They need to have an opportunity to succeed in this country like all the rest of us, just not instead of us, And so I guess I would just say it just has to be a fundamentally fair system and enforceable.
Okay. Fair and enforceable home ownership. Having easy access to home ownership was actually kind of the mantra that then spiraled out of control during the mid-2000s. Dealing with families, bankruptcies because of unaffordable mortgages is probably something with which you are uniquely and heavily aware. So can you talk us a little bit about what you think Congress should be doing in terms of home ownership?
Well, I think, there's nothing wrong with encouraging home ownership. And frankly, the real estate industry is one of the major economic engines here in Northern Virginia. Always has been. We're not just a federal government, we also are a private industry, and much of it depends upon the real estate market. So encouraging home ownership is a good thing. The easy money that came out between 2004, 5, 6, where people were being given loans without any verification as to their income or any assessment of risk, was really a situation created, in my opinion, by the lenders who were offloading the risk on these things to securitize debt obligations and off their own books, and they were just interested in placing more and more loans and earning transactional fees. So that situation got way out of control. I used to sit and I have a title agency, plus I practice law, and I also do bankruptcy work. But it depends upon what is happening where I'm the most busy. So I'm somewhat like a bobber on the economy, I feel like, jerking around depending upon what's happening. So back in the day, I'd sit there closing these loans, and I'd call my parents after a loan transaction, say, Mom, Dad, you wouldn't believe I just closed $1 million loan to a guy who appears to maybe be a blue-collar worker with very little, realistic opportunity to perhaps even pay that money back, and he brought no money to the table. There's something wrong with that situation. Well, it blew up. It blew up. Indeed, these quote liar loans were a major problem. And yet many homeowners, honest people, were involved in taking on more than they should have, perhaps, thinking that their homes in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area would always hold their value. And they didn't. They collapsed. So many good, honest people have been left or are in houses that are not worth what they owe. Many of them may have two-income wage earners in the house. I believe Loudoun County in particular has more two-income wage earner households than maybe any other county around. And so many of these people are paying the debt. They're not all going to bankruptcy and walking away from their homes. Many are, because they certainly couldn't afford it. But others are stuck, and the problem is they can't refinance their property and they can't sell their property. I deal with a lot of realtors. The realtors say to me, we don't have enough inventory to sell. It's interesting, okay? And then the lenders are telling me we have historically low interest rates. Yet there's not enough economic activity happening in the real estate market. To me, I believe there's too many properties that are not able to come onto the market because they are underwater, okay? Or there's just not enough equity to sell them. So we need to get those properties back on the market because of all the economic activity it would stimulate. Painting, recarpeting, appliance buying, everything. movers, realtors. And I believe the way to do that is there have been many plans, HARP, TARP, all the different plans. I don't believe that they've yet gotten to the root of the problem. There's still too many properties out there that need to be moved back onto the market. I believe you do that by letting the debtor allocate, or the borrower allocate, their payments to principal reduction until you get to a place where these properties have some equity.
We're going to come back after the break talking about that, exactly how we do that, especially from the point of view of the people who own that paper. So I'm Jeff Barnett. We're here with Richard Bolger, candidate for the United States Congress. Richard is an attorney from Fairfax and running for the 10th District, presently held by Congressman Frank Wolf. So we'll be back in just a couple of minutes.
They have commercials on there?
Yeah.
This is firstgov.gov, where we're obsessed with getting you government information.
Brand new student loan applications on the site, baby. This calls for a celebration. Where's your uncle?
So in the end, it was either take the astronaut gig or come work here. What can I say? Duty called.
Dude, that's my cop.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. No, I'm pretty sure that's Sam's cop.
Oh, sorry?
Yeah. No. Sam's? No.
Just log on or email us and get what you need.
C, change of address form. That's how it's done.
D, driver's license renewal.
E, emailing Social Security information.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Nice, we'll allow it. All right, Ed.
What are those?
Government surplus cars for auction.
You posted those online last time.
No, you did.
I'm posting them online this time!
For all your government information, firstgov.gov.
Oh, what have we got here? Sometimes you feel tired. You can't seem to lose those extra pounds off your midsection. And your joints hurt when you take the stairs? Well, you're getting older. But I'm happy to say that there's some simple things we can do to keep you happy and healthy for years to come. We can also lower your risk for some serious diseases the older population is often subject to. Proper nutrition is more important than ever. Your body has changed, you know. Not as many treats. A basic exercise plan, lots of walks and fresh air, and most importantly, come and see me for twice-yearly checkups to help ensure the best possible quality of life. Now, how does that sound? Good boy.
Improve the quality of life for your elderly pet. Schedule twice-yearly checkups that include preventive care and regular lab work. A message from the veterinary members of the American Animal Hospital Association.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Welcome back. I'm Jeff Barnett, and we're getting the Inside Scoop from Richard Bolger, a Fairfax County attorney who's running for the U.S. Congress in the 10th Congressional District. Before we get into any more questions, Richard, why don't you just tell us just a little bit about yourself, family, education, anything you want to tell us.
Okay, my dad was a graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy. He was a Navy fighter pilot. I was born down at Patuxent River Naval Air Station, and he was a test pilot, became very involved in NASA's race to put the first man on the moon. So we settled into Kensington, Maryland when I was a young boy, and I grew up over there. I went to American University. Right toward the end of there, I met my wife, Susan. We've been married 35 years. We moved over to Northern Virginia in 1979. I went to George Mason Law School at night while I worked during the day on Capitol Hill. I worked as a Washington representative for the food industry back in the day when Congress last reformed the tax code, actually.
Frank Wolf was
I know that.
Used to work for the food industry.
Yeah, it's a weird parallel.
Right.
He worked, exactly.
Baby food.
In fact, my mentor was a friend of his, you know, and I know it's strange. We both came out of the food industry. I don't know, what are the odds of that? But I personally wanted to, you know, I was representing food manufacturers at that time, but I really wanted to work for people. So when I got out of law school, I started taking court-appointed cases in the District of Columbia, and started to practice in Arlington. I was there from '87 to 1997, and in 1997 I moved out to Fairfax. And I have been practicing, you know, bankrupts. Over the years I've done it all.
And done a lot of youth sports and coaching.
20 years of coaching boys and girls basketball. Our roots are deep. I have 4 children. My wife has been active volunteering at Oakton High School, every school she's ever been in, and she's a real benefit to me in doing this campaigning, because she has a lot of friends and she loves to organize volunteers, and she's been a big boost to me.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks.
Before we went on the break, we were talking about housing. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that you've talked about is that people who are underwater on their mortgages, they're not able to refinance at the lower rates that are available today, and that you want to address that problem. Now, on the other side, though, there are people who are holding that paper. They're not, you know, the banks have already sold them, they've securitized it. So they're holding that paper, and they don't want to forego those interest rates, and they don't want to discount their principal. So how do you deal with that? What's the kind of the path forward?
On the one hand, when the banks got in trouble as part of the real estate collapse, they got help from the taxpayers. What I'm talking about is a remedy between a lender and a borrower. It doesn't involve taxpayer money. I'm not asking the government to give money to borrowers. Okay, let's get that straight. But it's just a real problem when day after day you meet good, hardworking people. I'm out knocking on doors. I talked to a gentleman, retired naval officer himself, who's living in a house, a nice house. It's underwater. He can't refinance it. He cannot sell it. He's telling me, I don't even want to repair my driveway right now because of the fact that I'm pouring money down a hole. And he's upset. He doesn't know what to do. He's making the payments because he feels that's his duty. And indeed it is, but there is no way, and when you have such a widespread problem, that it is good for the economy. And I believe that you take a targeted approach with a scalpel, you can do it in a legislative way, in a thoughtful way, and target it. And I don't think we'll have this problem again, hopefully. But you know, I would only attack a certain segment of loans that were lent during a certain time period, and then perhaps the economy would be started again, but jump-started again. But I was saying to you earlier that, for example, I had a lady who bought a condominium with her mother 6 years ago. Okay, this is 2004, 2008. It was right, 2007, right around the time of the collapse. Okay, that property went underwater. For one reason or another, the mother and the daughter could not make the payments. I don't recall. The mom got sick. Anyway, they haven't made a payment in 6 years, and the bank will not take the property back. They don't want it. So that property sits vacant. It's a condominium. The condominium fees are not being paid. The association that has to deal with that has a problem. And that property will just sit there unless until something happens to get properties like that back on the market.
So this is the issue. This is the issue that realtors say they don't have any inventory.
Right.
But at the same time, banks are keeping a lot of those foreclosed properties vacant.
A lot of them are. It's like saying we should never get divorced. Well, I agree, but some people do. And so you have to have a way to deal with it. We shouldn't be in this situation, but we are. And there has to be a remedy to get these properties back on the market. There's just too many people out there that are waiting to sell, buy, and these properties need to come back on. So.
Okay. Minimum wage is one of the things that people are talking about in ways today that a year ago you did not hear near as much about. And income inequality, that whole movement is coming in. Mm-hmm. So let's just talk about minimum wage. Right now it's $7.25. Right. So about $14,500 a year, which is below the poverty line. Where do you think it should be? How should we be thinking about minimum wage?
Well, as I said, I deal with people every day. They come into my office, I go over budgets with them, we talk about their financial situation. I had a lady come in, she's a single mom, 2 children, she drives a bus, has been driving the same bus for 15 years. She makes $14.17 an hour. She has to be subsidized by taxpayers. Right. That's not enough money for her to raise her 2 children. And so I said, hey, let's double the minimum wage to $14.50. Get the dialogue going. Take a bold approach. Go for it. I mean, if it got to 10 or 11 as a result of pushing for 14, I mean, at least it's better than $7.25 an hour. We don't want the taxpayers subsidizing hardworking people if we can possibly help it, and give them the dignity of a decent wage.
All right. If you look at Walmart today, about a third of their people, about 500,000 of their people are at minimum wage. So in essence, the rest of us have to subsidize those people because minimum wage is a below poverty wage. Right. And so we're subsidizing, in essence, Walmart. Lots of big issues. I think we got about 5.5 minutes left. Lots of big issues: abortion, gay rights, gun control, Social Security, Obamacare, issues that really split the electorate. Can you just pick one of those and just kind of tell us where you come down?
Okay. Well, in general, Jeff, I consider myself socially progressive, fiscally somewhat conservative. Okay. When it comes to social issues, whether it's gay rights, marriage equality, a woman's right to her own health care decisions, I am completely for keeping the government out of it, or complete equality, non-discrimination. I am there, but on the other side of the issue, the fiscal issues, I realize we're in a tough economy. We need to be very careful with the taxpayers' dollars, and that is something I'd be very, very careful about, and respect the trust, in essence, of the taxpayers to manage their money. But again, when it comes to government policy, instituting policies as to who should marry who, or what a woman's right is with respect to her own health care decisions, I think the government should stay out of that.
Completely out of it.
Correct.
Okay. Under Obamacare,
well, I mean, they should enforce equality, non-discrimination, but they should not be legislating morality, okay, if you will.
Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act. When you talk to people, is that an issue that comes up on the doors when you talk with people?
Yes. Some people view that as a reason to dislike the president completely, and they close the door. Boom, that's it. To me, a small businessman, I've always provided health care insurance to my few employees. That expense has been going higher and higher year after year. So plus, it's one of the major reasons people file personal bankruptcy, right. Unpaid medical bills. So I know reform has to occur in the healthcare system. I'm very glad pre-existing conditions are no longer a problem. It's good we can keep our children on a policy to age 26. The website rollout, to me, it's access. It seems to be, in my work on that website, it's just access to a health insurance policy and maybe some subsidies for the low-income people. We have to have affordable health care available to Americans. I'm not saying the Affordable Care Act is the answer. Certainly needs to be, improved, it seems.
Yeah, when you first started talking, really the first 2 points you raised really dealt with the affordable side. Costs are spiraling out of control. We were talking in the first segment. 16% of the gross domestic product today in America is healthcare, and it's climbing towards 20, and that's much higher than what our global competitors, the Germans, the Japanese, English, pay. Mm-hmm. So, to what extent do you think Obamacare is a first step or a path towards getting down the cost of healthcare?
Well, I think that remains to be seen. Right. We want the best health care in the world. We want the best food distribution system in the world. We want the best scientists in the world. And we believe through capitalism and competition, we're going to get it. And some people try to make out this as an attempt to socialize medicine and what have you. And have poor health care and wait in long lines for medical procedures or what have you. It remains to be seen, and as to whether this will help keep costs down. But so far, I think a statistic just came out today that there's more people now with insurance, so we have fewer uninsured people. I think the fewer uninsured people you have, the better it should be for the cost of health care. Right. My common sense.
Getting everybody into the tent, right. Which you really can't service pre-existing conditions unless everybody is already in the system. Yeah. We've got just over a minute left, Richard.
Oh, wow.
Just tell why don't you tell the viewers, what's kind of a message that you would like them to spread to their friends about your candidacy?
My message is that I am not a career politician. I am a guy who has experience working on Capitol Hill, 7 years working at Capitol Hill, trained by some of the best people there. I have 30 years of practicing law and helping average everyday Americans deal with economic anxieties. And I want to get in and solve problems, and it's not just a cliche to me. It's something that motivates me and is a passion that burns within me to get in and make things happen. And I'm not there to protect a job. I'll be there for stand up to special interests, and I want the American family to be my special interest.
I've really enjoyed this conversation, Richard.
Thank you.
We've been talking with Richard Bolger, candidate for the United States Congress in Virginia's 10th Congressional District. Richard is an attorney from the Oak Hill area, and he's aiming for, I guess we'll be having a convention in about a month and a half from now. So again, I'm Jeff Barnett. This is The Inside Scoop. Thanks for joining us.